Alright, hi everybody, I'm Mike Wood, and my topic was the evacuation of Dunkirk. The question I was really trying to focus on was, how did this affect the outcome of World War II, and did it affect the outcome of World War II? And I'll first start by explaining what kind of happened and how the situation came about. The Germans started invading Belgium and Holland on May 10th, 1940, with air forces, ground forces, and they were able to take over in about 4 days due to the lack of military power from both of these countries. And so the Allies, Britain and France, began to try to defend, send a defense out towards the Nazis, however, were relatively unsuccessful, and were therefore pushed back up into Dunkirk, as you see right here. And you see their backs were right up against the water, and they had Nazi forces coming at them from the south and from the east. So they were basically trapped, over 338,000 troops, and were obviously in a really bad situation. However, very little of these troops were killed or captured by the Germans for a couple reasons. First of all, Hitler thought that they were in such a dire situation that they would come to peace terms with him. However, that never happened. And Hitler also didn't want to spur up the Americans from coming in and getting involved in the war, because at this point they weren't even involved in World War II, so he didn't want to kind of awaken the Americans. It was the last thing that he wanted. Types of sources I used, the main source I used was a book called I Fought at Dunkirk, and it was a personal book wrote by, and it describes 7 British troops, or British soldiers who were at Dunkirk, and one in particular I thought was interesting, because this guy, he went to meet the Germans in Belgium, and then he was pushed back, obviously, and once he was back at Dunkirk, he explained the situation that was going on. He said that he waited for 2 days straight for a boat to come pick him up, had very little food, the only thing he had was chocolate in his pockets, and sat there for 2 days straight, and finally a rowboat came up on the beach, because how the evacuation started was smaller boats would come ashore, take a certain amount of soldiers off at a time out to sea, and a larger ship would be waiting to take him back to Dover up in England there. And however, his nightmare really wasn't over, because he finally got on the big boat, and a German airstrike actually sunk the ship he was on, and so he was stranded in the water for a while before another boat was able to come pick him up. So this guy obviously went through a huge nightmare with this whole situation, and I just thought it was interesting reading from a first-hand experience just what it was like and kind of the conditions that were going on. Some of the problems I encountered with my paper, one was definitely the length. This is just kind of a simple topic, and I couldn't really find all the information required to fill out the 8 to 10 page requirement. And also the sources, like I said, I used that one source, but other than that, I couldn't really find a lot of good, useful sources that were kind of, that really helped me out with my paper, so the lack of sources was definitely there as well. There were the preconceptions, people think that this would have been a huge turning point in the war, and obviously that's a preconception. I agree with that, because obviously if you lose 330,000 soldiers in one battle, that's a huge, huge loss. And so, the synopsis, there's actually one more source I've got to talk about, and this actually was kind of it looked at in the future, if all those soldiers had been killed or captured, how the war might have ended up. Because if you look at it, Hitler, if all those soldiers are in the way, that eliminates most of the French and British armies, and so he's going to really have no trouble in capturing France and later England, and so he's going to really take over all of Europe for the most part, and then really, this wouldn't even get the Americans into the war, in Europe at least, so they wouldn't have been involved, and so God knows the kind of things that Germany would have been able to do had they have taken advantage of the situation. And so that's my presentation. Any questions?